It was supposed to be a normal morning run until billionaire Richard Langston found a teenage girl unconscious on a park bench. 3 crying babies wrapped in thin blankets beside her. He rushed them to his mansion, but when she woke up, her heartbreaking truth left him speechless. This is another interesting true life story. Don't miss it. Welcome to Chill with Joe. Please support this channel by clicking the like button and do well to subscribe. Silas Dlamini was a very rich man. He lived in a big house with many rooms, but he lived alone. Every morning, before the sun came up, he went for a walk in the park near his home in Johannesburg. The park was quiet that early. Only the birds sang and the wind moved through the trees. That morning Silas walked slowly, thinking about nothing in particular. His hands were in his pockets, and he didn't expect anything strange. But as he walked past a wooden bench under a big tree, something caught his eye. At first he thought it was just a pile of old blankets. He took a few more steps, then stopped. He turned back and looked again. The blankets moved. Silas stepped closer, his heart beating a little faster. As he came near the bench, he saw a girl, maybe 19 years old, lying on her side. Her clothes were dirty and torn. Her face looked pale and tired. Her eyes were closed. She wasn't moving. Next to her were 3 tiny babies wrapped in thin cloths. They were crying softly, their little hands reaching out. They looked cold. Their faces were wet with tears. Silas stood still. His mind raced. Should he call the police? Should he wait? But the babies cried louder. One of them started coughing. Silas made a decision. He gently picked up the babies, one by one, and held them close to his chest. Then he carefully lifted the girl into his arms. She was light, too light. She didn't wake up. She didn't even stir. Without another thought, Silas walked quickly back to his car. People on the street turned to look, surprised to see the well-known billionaire carrying children and a homeless girl. He didn't care. He placed the girl and the babies in the back seat and drove fast toward his mansion in Santon. His hands shook slightly on the steering wheel. He didn't know who they were or what their story was, but something in his heart told him this was not just a random meeting. This was meant to happen. The big black gate opened slowly as Silas's car drove into the mansion. The house was quiet, as always. Birds flew across the garden, and the morning sun touched the windows. Inside the house, Nandi, the housekeeper, was already working. She had worked for Mr. Dlamini for over 15 years and knew his routine well. But today felt different. She looked out the window and saw Silas rushing out of the car. Her mouth dropped open. "Is that babies?" she whispered to herself. Silas carried 3 small babies in his arms and had a young girl on his back. Nandi ran to open the front door. "Sir, what happened? Who are they?" she asked, shocked. "No time to explain," Silas said quickly. "Get warm water, blankets, and call the doctor now." Nandi blinked in surprise. She had never seen her boss like this. His voice was firm but full of worry. They laid the girl gently on the living room couch. The babies were placed on a soft rug near the fireplace. Nandi quickly covered them with warm blankets and brought bottles of milk from the kitchen. Silas held one of the babies and tried to help feed him. The baby took the bottle eagerly, sucking fast. "They're hungry," Nandi said softly. "Starving." Silas nodded. "I found them in the park. She was passed out. The babies were crying, cold, scared." Nandi checked the girl's forehead. "She has a fever, and she's so thin. This girl hasn't eaten properly in days." Soon the family doctor, Dr. Jacobs, arrived. He examined the girl and the babies carefully. After a few tests, he looked at Silas and Nandi with concern. "They're weak, but alive. The girl has low blood sugar and is badly dehydrated. She needs rest, food, and care. The babies are underweight. They'll need good nutrition." Silas sat down slowly. He watched the babies sleep, their tiny chests rising and falling. The young girl, still unconscious, looked peaceful now, but too quiet, too still. "Make a room ready for her," Silas said to Nandi, "and one for the babies." Nandi nodded slowly. "Yes, sir, but are they staying here?" Silas didn't answer right away. He just stared at the sleeping girl. "I don't know who they are," he said softly, "but they're safe now. That's what matters." Nandi looked at her boss with new eyes. In all her years working for him, she had never seen him care like this. The house, once filled with silence and sorrow, now held the sound of tiny breaths and something else, a spark of life. The sun was already high when Amale opened her eyes. At first, she didn't know where she was. The soft bed, clean sheets, and warm smell of food confused her. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming, but then panic hit her like a wave. "The babies," she gasped. She sat up too fast. Her head spun. She looked around and saw the 3 babies lying nearby in a small crib. They were wrapped in clean clothes and sleeping peacefully. Amale jumped out of bed and rushed to them. She picked up Buell first, holding her close, then Luandel and Anathi. Tears ran down her face as she hugged all 3. Her hands shook, her body weak, but her heart full of fear. "Where am I? Who brought us here?" she whispered. Just then the door opened slowly. Silas stood at the doorway, watching quietly. His face was calm, but his eyes held concern. "You're safe," he said gently. "No one will harm you here." Amale backed away, holding the babies tight. Her eyes were wide with fear. "Please, don't take them from me," she said, her voice cracking. "We didn't steal. We were just tired." "No one is accusing you of anything," Silas replied. "I found you in the park. You were unconscious. The babies were crying. I brought you here to help." Amale looked down, ashamed. Her legs gave in, and she dropped to her knees, still holding the babies close. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't want this. I just wanted them to live." Silas walked slowly toward her and knelt down. "It's okay," he said softly. "They're alive. You are too. That's what matters." Amale cried harder. She hadn't cried like this in months. Not since her mother died. Not since the streets became her home. Silas didn't touch her, but his presence was calm, quiet, kind. After a few minutes, Amale wiped her face with her sleeve. "My name is Amale," she said. "These are my siblings. They're not mine, but they're all I have." Silas nodded. "I'm Silas, and you don't have to tell me everything now. Just rest." Amale looked at him, unsure. She wanted to trust him. Something about his voice felt honest, but she had learned not to trust too easily. Still, for the first time in a long while, she felt something warm in her chest. Maybe it was hope. Amale sat near the window watching the sun go down. The babies were asleep in their crib, full from the warm milk Nandi had given them. For the first time in a long while, everything felt calm. Nandi walked in quietly with a bowl of warm soup. She placed it on the table beside Amale and sat across from her. "You didn't eat much at breakfast," Nandi said gently. "Try this. It's butternut soup, soft and warm for the stomach." Amale nodded shyly. "Thank you, Mum." "Just Nandi," she smiled. Amale took a small spoonful. It was the best thing she'd tasted in weeks. The warmth filled her chest, not just her belly. They sat in silence for a while. Then Nandi spoke softly. "You're brave, you know. Most girls your age are still trying to pass their final exams, and here you are, caring for 3 little ones like a mother." Amale looked down. Her hands were thin and scratched. She had stopped seeing herself as a teenager a long time ago. "They're not mine," she said quietly. "They're my younger siblings." Nandi's eyes widened. "Oh, our mother. Her name was Nomvula. She died the day they were born," Amale continued. Her voice shook, but she kept going. She bled too much. The nurse said they couldn't stop it. Nandi placed her hand over her heart. "I'm so sorry, child." Amale nodded. "Their father, my stepfather, he left before the funeral. Disappeared. I haven't seen him since, so it was just you and the babies." "Yes," Amale whispered. "I tried to stay in school, but they cried all night. I couldn't focus. I missed classes. My principal said I needed to choose." Nandi's eyes filled with tears. "And you chose them. I had to. I'm all they have." Silence filled the room again, but it wasn't heavy. It was deep and full of respect. "You didn't just keep them alive," Nandi said. "You carried them through fire." Amale looked away. "Some days I wanted to give up, but then one of them would smile and I'd remember why I had to keep going." Nandi reached across and held her hand. "You're not alone anymore, Amale. Not here." Amale looked at Nandi, her eyes tired but soft. She didn't know if she could believe that yet, but for the first time someone had said it out loud, and it felt real. It was late in the evening when Silas knocked softly on Amale's door. The babies had just fallen asleep, and the room was quiet. Amale looked up from the small chair near the crib and nodded. "Come in," she said softly. Silas stepped inside, his hands in his pockets. He looked tired but calm. "I just wanted to check on you," he said. "Are you feeling a bit stronger?" Amale nodded slowly. "Yes, thank you for everything." He sat down across from her near the window. "You don't have to thank me, Amale. I just did what anyone should have done." She looked down at her hands, then back at him. "Most people didn't," she said quietly. "They saw us and walked away. Some shouted at us to leave, others crossed the road. Nobody ever asked if we were okay." Silas didn't speak, he just listened. "I tried," Amale continued. Her voice was soft but steady. "After Mama died, I got small jobs, cleaning, washing clothes, anything I could find. Some days I earned R20, other days nothing." She paused, brushing her fingers against the crib. "The babies moved gently in their sleep. We couldn't afford rent. The landlord gave us 1 week to leave. I begged him to wait until the babies were stronger, but he didn't care. We ended up in a shelter. It was full, cold and loud. People fought over food. I didn't feel safe there." Silas frowned, listening closely. "After that we slept outside. I wrapped them in whatever I had. Old jackets, cloths, even plastic bags when it rained. I made sure they ate first. If we only had a little porridge, I fed them and drank water to keep my stomach quiet." Silas swallowed hard. Her words hit deep. "Some nights I stayed awake just to watch them breathe. I was scared someone would take them or that they'd get sick. Or worse." Her voice broke. "I was tired, hungry. My legs felt weak. That day in the park, I didn't even know I had passed out. I just wanted to rest for a second." Silas leaned forward, his voice gentle. "And you didn't think anyone would come?" Umali shook her head slowly. "No one ever did." Silas looked at her for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "But someone did. This time someone did." Tears welled up in her eyes. She didn't cry loudly, just let the tears fall in silence. For so long she had carried everything on her own, the pain, the fear, the hunger. But now, for the first time, someone saw her and stayed. Silas couldn't sleep. After Umali told her story, something inside him wouldn't rest. Her name, her eyes, even the way she spoke, it all felt familiar. And her mother's name, Nomvula, echoed in his mind like a forgotten melody. The next morning, Silas asked his driver to take him to the old building where Umali said her mother used to work. It was one of the smaller factories Silas had owned years ago, now closed down. The gates were rusty, the sign faded. Inside, a few boxes of old employee files had been left behind in storage. Silas opened one box and began going through the records page by page, hundreds of names, faces, dates. Then he paused. Nomvula Humalo. Start date, July 2008. Position, cleaner. End date, December 2015. He flipped the page and there it was. A photo. His breath caught in his throat. It was her. Silas stared at the picture. The woman had kind eyes, a soft smile and short curly hair. He remembered that face clearly because years ago she had saved his daughter's life. It was at a company family day. His daughter Ayanda had wandered too close to the pool. In the blink of an eye she had fallen in. No one had seen it happen except Nomvula. Without thinking, Nomvula had jumped into the water fully dressed and pulled Ayanda out. His daughter had coughed and cried, but she lived because of this woman. He had thanked her, of course, given her a small bonus. But with time, life moved on. Now, years later, her daughter had landed at his doorstep, starving, homeless, and carrying the weight of 3 babies. Silas sat down slowly, holding the photo to his chest. "Nomvula," he whispered, "you saved my child, and now maybe it's time I save yours." He left the old building with a strange mix of emotions. Guilt, wonder, fate. When he got back to the mansion, Amale was sitting in the garden with Nandi and the babies. She looked peaceful, not knowing the secret Silas had just uncovered. He stood at a distance for a moment, watching her laugh softly as Buell pulled her braid. The sun lit her face, and for the first time he saw Nomvula in her smile. This wasn't just an act of kindness anymore. It was something deeper, something meant to be. The house was quiet that night. The babies had gone to sleep early, and Nandi had already gone to her room. Amale sat in the garden, her legs tucked under her, staring at the stars. She heard footsteps behind her, but she didn't turn. She knew it was Silas. He sat down beside her without saying a word. For a while they just sat in silence. Then Silas spoke, his voice low and heavy. "I found out something today. Something about your mother." Amale turned her head slightly. "You knew her?" Silas nodded slowly. "Yes." Her name, Nomvula, sounded familiar. I couldn't place it at first, but then I remembered. Years ago she worked for one of my companies. Just a cleaner. Quiet. Kind. Always early. Amale looked at him, confused. "One day," Silas continued, "we had a family event. My daughter Ayanda was just 6. She slipped near the pool and fell in. No one noticed, except Nomvula." Amale's eyes widened. "Your mother saved her. She didn't even stop to think. She just jumped in. Ayanda lived because of her." Amale covered her mouth with her hand, tears forming in her eyes. Silas swallowed hard. I thanked her, gave her a bonus, and then life moved on. I never saw her again. Amale blinked back tears. "She never told me." Silas looked at the sky. Maybe she didn't think it mattered. But it mattered to me. I just didn't realize how much until now. Amale looked down at her lap. "But you said lived. What happened to your daughter?" Silas's face changed. A deep sadness passed over his eyes. "She died 2 years later," he said softly. "Car accident. A drunk driver. I wasn't there. I was in another country. In a meeting." Amale's voice was barely a whisper. "I'm so sorry. I've carried that guilt for years," he said. "I stopped going out, stopped opening my heart to anything or anyone. I kept telling myself it was safer that way." He looked at Amale now, really looked.
But then I saw you in that park, with those babies. And something in me cracked open.
Amale's lip trembled. You've been through pain too. He nodded. And so have you. The silence between them now felt different. It wasn't empty. It was full of memories, pain, and something new forming. I think your mother left you with more than just 3 babies, Silas said gently. She left you her courage. Amale wiped her face and gave a small, quiet smile.
And maybe your daughter left you something too, she said.
What's that? He asked. A reason to care again. They sat under the stars, not as a billionaire and a poor girl, but as 2 people learning how to breathe again, together. The days began to feel different. The air seemed lighter somehow inside the mansion. Silas was busy with work, but every time he came home, he would check on Amale and the babies. He brought toys for the children, books for Amale, and always made sure they had enough food. It was becoming more than just a safe place. It was starting to feel like a home. One afternoon, Silas sat down with Amale in the living room, where the babies were playing nearby. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the room. Silas looked at Amale, his face kind but serious. I want to help you, Amale, he said softly. I've been thinking about it a lot. You've had so much on your shoulders already. You shouldn't have to carry it all alone anymore. Amale looked at him hesitant. I don't want to owe you anything. Silas smiled gently. It's not about owing me. It's about what's best for you and for those babies. She looked down at her hands, fingers twisting nervously. I don't know if I can trust anyone anymore. Not like that. I'm not asking you to trust me completely, Silas said. I'm asking you to let me help you stand up, to give you a chance. A chance to go back to school. A chance to dream again. Amale's eyes filled with uncertainty. I don't even know where to start. I've been out of school for so long. I don't think I can do it. You can, Silas said firmly. You're smart. You've survived this long. Trust me, you have the strength to start over. I'll pay for your education. All of it. You won't have to worry about money, and I'll make sure the babies are cared for while you're studying. Amale swallowed hard. The idea sounded too good to be true. She wanted to say yes, she really did, but something inside her resisted. Why are you doing this for me? She asked quietly. I'm just a stranger. You're not a stranger, Silas replied. And if you remember, it's your mother who saved my daughter. It's my turn to help you. This is my way of saying thank you. Amale looked away, her heart heavy. She didn't want to be weak. She didn't want to depend on anyone. Just then, Nandi entered the room, holding a tray with fresh tea. She smiled warmly as she set it down. She could see the tension in Amale's face, and she sat down beside her. Amale, Nandi said softly, I know it's hard to accept help. I understand. But think about the future. Think about those babies. They need you to be strong for them. And the only way to do that is to take the opportunity that's here right in front of you. Amale hesitated. She felt torn between the pride that had kept her fighting on her own and the fear of failing if she accepted Silas's help. Sometimes, Nandi continued, the greatest strength is knowing when to let go, when to let others in. You don't have to carry everything alone. Amale blinked away the tears that threatened to spill. But what if I can't do it? What if I fail? You won't fail, Nandi said, her voice warm and comforting. You have all of us now, and you're not alone. Amale looked at Silas, then back at Nandi. Slowly, she nodded. Okay, she said quietly. I'll try. I'll try to go back to school. A small smile spread across Silas's face. You're making the right choice. For the first time in a long while, Amale felt a small spark of hope. It wasn't the big, bright flame she had dreamed of. It was smaller, more fragile, but it was enough to move forward. As the days passed, the mansion began to feel like a real home again. The laughter of the babies filled the air. Amale slowly started her studies with the help of online classes. And though it wasn't easy, every step forward made her feel stronger. And for the first time in years, Amale allowed herself to believe in something more. A future. It was a quiet afternoon when Amale walked into the living room with a small piece of paper in her hand. The babies were napping, and Silas was sitting by the window looking out at the garden. He'd been thinking about how far they had come, how much had changed in such a short time. Amale walked up to him slowly, her hands trembling just a little. She held out the paper to Silas. This is for you, she said, her voice soft, almost shy. Silas looked at the paper, unsure of what to expect. It was a drawing, a simple sketch, but it was beautiful in its innocence. The lines were uneven, and the colours were all over the place, but it didn't matter. In the middle of the page was a figure, a man standing next to 3 little children. At the top of the page, in childish handwriting, was a word. Baba. Silas's heart stopped. He stared at the drawing, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. Baba, he whispered almost to himself. Amale nodded, a soft smile tugging at her lips. Boule drew it, she said. She doesn't really understand it yet, but she calls you Baba. She sees you as, well, as family. The word hit him harder than he expected. He looked down at the drawing again, at the 3 little faces next to his own. His chest tightened. Silas had always been a man who kept his emotions locked away. His daughter's death, the loneliness of his life, the walls he built to protect himself, they had all kept him distant from feeling real emotions. But something about the simplicity of the drawing, the trust in those innocent eyes, broke through his walls. Tears filled his eyes, and for the first time in years he let them fall. He didn't try to hold them back. The grief he had buried for so long, the guilt, the pain of losing Ayanda, the emptiness of his life, finally poured out. He didn't need to hide it anymore. Amale watched him, unsure of what to say. She had never seen Silas like this. The man who had always been so strong, so composed, was breaking down in front of her. But there was something about the way he cried. It wasn't just sadness. It was a release, a weight being lifted. Silas had been holding on to so much for so long. And now, here in this quiet moment, he was finally letting it all go. After a few moments, he wiped his eyes and looked at Amale, his voice steady but filled with emotion. I've been trying to protect myself for so long, he said, his voice breaking slightly. I kept my distance, kept my heart closed, but these babies and you have changed everything. He paused, taking a deep breath. I want to do more. I want to give them a future, a real one. A future full of love, security, and everything they deserve. Amale's eyes widened. What do you mean? I want to adopt them, Silas said quietly but firmly. I want to make them my children legally. I want them to have a future, a place where they are safe and loved. I want to be their father. Amale's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected this. She had always known Silas was kind. But this was more than just kindness. It was a promise, a commitment. Are you sure? She whispered. Silas nodded. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I don't want to waste any more time. I want them to have everything I can give them. Amale felt tears welling in her eyes. She had always feared the future for her siblings, wondering where they would end up,
who would care for them. But now, Silas was offering them something she never thought possible: a real family. The babies, her siblings, would have a future with a father who would love them, a future filled with hope. Silas stood up and held the drawing close to his chest, a symbol of the promise he was making. "I'll make sure they're taken care of. I'll give them everything they need. They will know they are loved." Amale stood too and hugged him. She didn't say anything at first. There were no words that felt right. But in that moment, she knew everything was going to change. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel alone. And the triplets, her siblings, were going to grow up surrounded by love and care. They had a future, and it started right here with this unexpected gift. A year had passed since Silas had made the decision to adopt the triplets, and so much had changed in their lives. Amale was sitting in a lecture hall, a notebook in front of her, listening carefully to the professor. She was no longer the young woman who had struggled to survive, the girl who had carried the weight of the world on her shoulders. Now she was a university student, her future stretching ahead of her. She was working hard, but for the first time in a long time, she felt confident. She was learning and growing, something she never thought possible just a year ago. At home, the triplets were thriving. Buli, Zanelli, and Themba were no longer the quiet, scared babies Silas had found in the park. They were happy, healthy, and full of energy. They ran around the mansion, laughing, playing with their toys, and learning new things every day. Nandi had become like a second mother to them, and Silas, well, Silas was their father now. Silas wasn't just a billionaire anymore. He was more than that. He had found a new purpose in life. Every day he woke up with a smile, excited to spend time with his children, to watch them grow, to see them learn. He took them to the park, played games with them, and even helped them with their homework as they got older. His life was no longer about work and success. It was about family. It was about love. One evening, as Silas sat on the sofa watching the triplets play with their building blocks, Amali walked into the room. She had just come home from class. Her backpack slung over her shoulder, she was smiling, her eyes bright. "I finished my assignment early today," she said, her voice filled with excitement. Silas looked up at her, pride filling his chest. "That's my girl. You're doing great, Amali." She smiled at him. "I'm just so grateful, Silas. I never thought I'd be here. I thought my life was over before it even started." "You've come so far," Silas said, his voice filled with warmth. "You've made me proud, and I know your mother would be proud too." Amali's eyes softened at the mention of her mother, Nomvula, the woman who had given everything for her children. Amali thought of the sacrifices Nomvula had made, and the way Silas had honored that love by helping her family. "I don't think I'll ever be able to repay you for everything you've done for us," Amali said quietly, sitting down next to him. "You don't have to," Silas replied, his voice full of emotion. "You've given me more than I could ever ask for. You brought me back to life, Amali, you and the babies. I thought I had lost everything, and then I found you." Amali reached out and took his hand. "I was just trying to survive. I didn't know I was giving you anything, but now I understand. You gave us everything, and I'm going to make sure I give back to you, to the babies." "You already have," Silas said, his eyes glistening with tears. "You've given me a family. You've given me a reason to wake up every day and smile. You've given me everything." Amali's heart swelled with emotion as she looked at Silas. The man who had once been a stranger, the man who had been so closed off from the world, was now the father she had always needed. And Silas, he had found something in Amali and the triplets that he never thought he'd find again, a sense of purpose, of love, and of family. The triplets ran over to him. each of them holding up their own drawings, showing him the colourful pictures they had made that afternoon. Silas laughed, his heart full. He took the drawings from their hands, kissing their foreheads, his love for them overflowing. "You're a real dad now, Silas," Amali said with a soft smile, watching the scene unfold. "I guess I am," Silas said, his voice thick with emotion, "and I've never been happier." As the family sat together, surrounded by laughter and love, Silas looked around at the life he had built, this life that he never thought was possible. A year ago he had been lost, stuck in a world of wealth and loneliness, but now he had everything he needed. He had a family, he had love, and he had a purpose. Through a girl who had nothing, Amali, the girl he had found in the park, Silas had found everything.